What's up, everybody? Chris Pennell here. We're going over my tight end and defensive tier rankings for week 11 of the fantasy football season. If you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll start with the S tier. There's only one man that deserves to be here on a weekly basis because he's a tier above the entire field, but it's Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. And when you're one of the best offenses in the league with the best quarterback in football, gets you the ball with a 25% target share, nearly 9 targets per game, 75 receiving yards, and you're catching almost all of your targets with half a receiving touchdown per game in a favorable matchup in what should be a pretty high scoring game with a 24-point implied team total this week. Yeah, you're going to be the number one spot every single week. I don't think you need me to tell you that. Then leading off our A tier, we have TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings, and we know Josh Dobbs loves the tight end position. Now, I'm not sure yet if Justin Jefferson is going to be back or not. Even if Jefferson is back, we do know that Dobbs just is going to feed the tight end position. We saw that in Arizona, and we are seeing it now in Minnesota, and Hawkinson is one of the most talented tight ends in the league on the season, getting peppered with targets, 25.5% target share, 7.1 catches per game, 9.2 targets. Honestly, very similar numbers to Travis Kelce, a little bit more of a market share of the team's air yards at 25%. And the Denver Broncos are allowing the second most points per game in the tight end position with 16 and nearly 70 receiving yards per game. So it's a great spot for Hawkinson to, not sure he's going to repeat what he did versus the Saints, but should be in line for 15 plus points once again. Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens, he plays tonight versus the Bengals, and they're equally as bad versus the tight end position, allowing the third most points per game at 15.7, nearly 70 yards per game. And we know he's going to be a touchdown scoring threat every week as he's nearly averaging 0.7 touchdowns per game on a 23% target share. Operates in the slot around 80% of the time, so he's rarely ever on the inside, especially blocking. Only 2% of the time this season, which is what you always want to see. Moving on to our B tier. Honestly, all these guys have A tier upside, but I just can't put the entire list in the A tier because that's going to be a bit boring. So Sam Laporta, while I was tempted to put him in the A tier, he's just going to have to live in the B tier, so deal with it. But high implied team total for the Detroit Lions this week at 27.5, 7.5 point favorites here versus the Chicago Bears, which I believe when this opened, it was a 10-point spread. So that definitely did close. Maybe that's because Justin Fields looks like he's going to be back this week. But on the season, 7 targets per game on a 21.5% target share. And the Bears are currently 21st versus tight ends, and he's always going to be a touchdown scoring threat, nearly 0.5 on the season. Then we have Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills, and this dude just keeps producing ever since Dawson Knox went out. So if we look back to week 7 when Dawson Knox got hurt, 15.5 points for Kincaid on 8 targets, 7 targets versus Tampa Bay on 17.5 points, 11 targets versus the Bengals, 17.1 points, and 6 targets versus Denver last week with 16.1 points, 2 touchdowns in that span. But it's not like he's been touchdown reliant. He is solely getting there just based off the sheer volume that he's been receiving. That's all you can ask for. And we know Josh Allen, even though the turnovers have been there, he has been getting a bit unlucky in the turnover game. If you look at some of the advanced metrics. So I'm not going to bash on Josh Allen too much, but he knows how to sling the football, and that's all I care about. And the matchup versus the Jets, I mean, I don't care about matchups too much when it comes to the time position, but they are kind of below average versus the position this season, but they've been very stiff versus wide receivers. Then we have Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals, and it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, they are going to use the tight end position in this offense. Been heavily targeted. We saw it last week. No reason to believe it's not going to continue here versus the Houston Texans, who are currently allowing the second most points per game at the position at 16 and nearly 65 receiving yards per game. And moving on to the C tier, we have Dalton Schultz of the not Dallas Cowboys, even though that's his picture, of the Houston Texans, who's heavily involved in this offense. 6 targets per game on an 18.5% target share. Just been a consistent guy that gets a lot of targets from CJ Stroud, who has looked incredible recently. This is an offense that's going to put up points, and you're 27-point implied team total this week versus the Arizona Cardinals. They've actually been very stiff versus the time position, but honestly, I just don't care. Evan Ingram, another guy that just receives a lot of targets in his offense, which is going to keep him viable as a tight end 1 week in, week out. Yet to get into the end zone this season, but a 23% target share and over 7 targets per game. Not a good matchup once again, but who might get piggy at such a weak position. Then we have George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. Might feel a bit low because I know the talent's insane for him. 26.5 implied team total for the 49ers. Ripped off a super long touchdown last week. While the upside's there, it's just the targets aren't as high as I'd like them to be. Only 5 targets per game. 18% target share, but does get a 25% market share of the team's areas. But this is a team that just doesn't really throw the ball too much. I believe it's right under 30 times per game in the season if you're looking at Brock Purdy's overall numbers. So volume is not great, but the talent is there, but volume trumps all. Then we have Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys, and this Cowboys passing attack has looked incredible the past month now. Dak Prescott has been crushing it. 26-point implied team total on the road in Carolina. They're currently ranking 8th versus tight ends, but like I said, let's try not to get too picky with matchups. As long as you are getting consistent targets and running a lot of routes, which Jake Ferguson does on an offense that can put up points, that's all that matters. Then moving on to the D tier, lead off with Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields will be back, But on the season, consistent part of this passing attack, 20% target share, 5.6 targets per game. And they should be trailing this one versus Detroit, 7.5-point dogs on the road, and they currently rank 23rd versus tight ends. Then we have Logan Thomas of the Washington Commanders. And Sam Howell, he's putting up a ton of yards every single week. I believe he's right around 275, 280 passing yards per game on the season, throwing the ball over 35 times per game. And Logan Thomas getting close to 5.5 targets, 15% target share, good enough for me to be viable as a tight end one. And then fringe starters, if you don't have any of these available options, we do have David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. A fine option. Now, the thing is, we're not going to have Deshaun Watson this week. Looks like it's going to be DTR, and we know he is not the most reliable quarterback in the world. But the ball's going to have to go somewhere, and a safety valve like David Njoku might be easier than down the field with a Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore. So if we can get some checkdowns here across the middle of the field, I think Njoku's going to be fine. Nearly 6 targets per game on a 19% target share. Then we have Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Baker Mayfield's going to have to chuck the ball in this game. 11.5-point dogs on the road. And while he's not the most impressive tight end out there, he runs routes, he's going to be on the field, and that's all that matters at this point. And keep in mind, we're talking tight ends twos at this point, so hopefully you don't have to start them. But he's getting 4.5 targets per game on a 15% target share. And then we have Tyler Higbee of the Los Angeles Rams, and we are getting Matthew Stafford back this week, so that's a plus for every pass catcher in this offense, and while the numbers aren't great this season, he's seeing roughly a 14% target share and 4.5 targets per game. But I do like the potential game environment for this one, 46.5-point over-under, which is one of the highest of the weeks, and only a 1-point spread. And we're at home in the dome, so don't worry about any weather concerns. And the Seahawks are a pretty below average pass defense, I would say. They currently rank 17th versus tight ends, allowing close to 60 receiving yards per game. And while Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, everybody's healthy here, he should see at least a handful of targets with the chance of a touchdown. And moving on to defenses, I'm not going to go every single one individually because that's a bit of a waste of time. Because if anyone out there, I don't care who they are, if they tell you they know how defense is going to go on a week-to-week basis with a certain probability, they're lying to you. There's just no way to know. I mean, turnovers can be completely random. Obviously, if you're facing an awful quarterback on an awful team, the chances do increase, and that's why they're going to be ranked higher. And then you have to look at Vegas implied team totals, which is the number one factor for me, because the less points scored against your defense, the better chance that they are going to have to not lose points that week. So honestly, if you look at my rankings, it's basically just based off the implied team totals this week. Not completely. I mean, some units are better than the others, but if we're looking at my rankings, I have the Cowboys number 1 versus the Panthers. They do have a pretty low implied team total against them at 16. They are on the road, though. I'd like them to be at home at 10.5-point favorites here. Don't really have any concerns about that. Steelers, Commanders, and the 49ers in the A tier all have very low implied team totals. And the Steelers get DTR at quarterback. And if you watched them play versus Baltimore, it was atrocious. I'm sure they'll get a couple of turnovers there. And then Washington gets to face the Giants offense that has Tommy DeVito leading them the way with no Darren Waller. So it's basically just him and Saquon Barkley, who's going to get 40 touches and probably amass 70 yards, so it's not going to be pretty. And their defense sucks, but when you're facing Tommy DeVito at home as a 9-point favorite, you're going to be a very popular option to stream this week. In the B tier, I mean, we have the Browns defense, which is solid. I just worry about DTR putting them in bad positions throughout the game, so it could lead to easy scoring opportunities for the Steelers. But we know they have one of the best defenses in football, and I'm not scared of Kenny Pickett. Bills, Dolphins, they're in favorable spots versus Zach Wilson and then Aiden O'Connell. Then after that, just some decent streaming options. The Ravens defense is very good, but Joe Burrow's not someone I'm super excited to ever face. Lions are big favorites. Jacksonville gets Tennessee, which I'm not scared of. And then the Chargers get Jordan Love, who's always good to make some poor decisions throughout an entire game. Then hopefully you don't have to start anyone from the D and F tier. There's a couple of good defenses like the Kansas City Chiefs down here. The New York Jets aren't the worst defense in the world, but I don't love any of them in their matchups. So I would really try to stick to the C and above tier this week if you can. But with that being said, that's all I got for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you want to check out my DFS channel, I go over my core plays for DraftKings and FanDuel on Saturday morning every single week. If you want to check that out, just my name, Chris Pennell. Look it up as that is my main channel. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you all next time.